What have you heard about a natural growing substance that could help people that are suffering from depression, suicidal thoughts, PTSD, people that are addicted to drugs can take this substance in some cases just once and then find themselves free of everything that was affecting them physically and mentally because it is all equally combined. And then you find out, can't get it in the United States. No way, no wow, no way. Tom Feegle has been an advocate for this particular substance that I'm referring to. You have a number of clinics there in Cancun. I was reading through the research on it, Tom. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
The name of the drug is?
Ibogaine.
Ibogaine.
Yes.
It grows naturally on like it's a shrub of some sort in Africa. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the bark of a root of a shrub from central Western Africa.
Okay. And it was being used primarily by individuals living there. They would take it just in small doses, I guess, as a stimulant or something. But if you take more of it, then you can actually have hallucinogenic effects, much like what would you consider something like LSD or mushrooms?
Similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, similar. At least that's what the Nixon administration thought when they made it illegal with the commencement of the drug war and all psychedelics,
right.
Magic mushrooms, LSD, and others. Those drugs tend to make somebody feel like they're going out into another dimension. They may feel like they're experiencing some change in space and time. Ibogaine makes one feel like they go in. So it's a introspective experience. But what's most interesting to the clinicians is the neurobiological effect, the change in the brain chemistry that happens.
Let's talk about,
which is unique among all the
right. So from my really rudimentary understanding, so you have the prefrontal cortex handling the executive parts of, order and, planning and things like that. And then you can go back to back into the reptilian, right? The amygdala. And often when someone gets stimulated in a way like PTSD and a car backfires and that sends that person back, the stimulation goes past the executive back into the amygdala. And then now we're firing on dopamine and cortisol and a bunch of other things. Now the person is no longer, quote unquote, rationally responding to the stimuli. Is that a pretty good way of explaining it?
That's perfect. That's very good. Yes, that memory. The body is responding as if that is happening in the moment.
Yes.
So even though there's a past scary or traumatic event, the body's responding as if it's happening again and again and again. Every time that thought pattern happens.
Right. So what also can occur is that the stimuli hits, since the executive part of the brain form of the brain is not dealing with the stimuli in a rational way, again, rational quotes, think of it like roots of a tree, the parts that feed the executive branch begin to die off. And the amygdala becomes bigger and has more blood sources. So the person is responding with a lot of stimuli at this point, bypassing the rational part of the brain. Is that pretty good layout?
That's precisely the right perspective, and there's not much they can do about it. They can talk about it. They can learn to meditate. They can do a variety of therapeutic interventions. But to change the actual brain chemistry, there's only ever been two options: what the pharmaceutical industry has produced to numb the symptoms, or this natural root bark from a shrub in Central West Africa, which was discovered largely by accident in the Western world. It's been used for centuries in a tribal ceremonial use for people going through rites of passage in life at relatively low doses. But it was discovered during the 60s when more people were experimenting with psychedelics by an individual who happened to have some of these symptoms of trauma and chemical dependency, who realized after this otherwise routine trip that they didn't have any of those symptoms, and went on to spend their life investigating that experience.
Yeah.
His name was Howard Lotsoff.
We're talking with Tom Feegle, who is an advocate for Ibogaine. And you have a therapy clinic there. Is this going to fall into the category of the FDA and big pharma dominating where the money goes, which drugs get blocked, which drugs get approved? As long as you follow the money, something like this will never become mainstream?
It is impossible to tell. I mean, historical precedent would suggest that strongly, of course. Unlike other synthetic substances, this can't be patented. It comes from nature. It can be purified. It can be concentrated. The root bark itself is called iboga, Iboga, and ibogaine is a hydrochloride that's a purified, concentrated version of that comes from a pharmaceutical laboratory, but it's still a botanical. Mm-hmm. What the news today, you probably saw the Texas House of Representatives has given initial approval to a Senate-passed bill. It's already passed the Senate to encourage the federal government to approve legal access to ibogaine. And this program that they have passed now, both the House and the Senate, today 141 to 2 vote in favor of granting $50 million of research funding because of the promise of this particular substance on the landscape of all psychedelics to improve the symptoms for PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and chemical dependency.
Give us some examples of some, sort of outstanding, outside the box response to something like this.
Well, I mean, every day at Beond, we see this, but when used properly, ibogaine takes someone who has had multi-decade dependency on opioids, something that killed almost 4,000 people in Washington state from May of 2023 to April of 2024, and gives them choice again. These are people who cannot not use an opioid or they'll get sick and feel like they have flu-like symptoms, diarrhea, vomiting, fever. They can't not use. And this in one treatment will give them the choice back. Now they need therapeutic support to make sure that they make the right choice. But this is not a pharmaceutical. This is not methadone. This is not a substance like buprenorphine or Suboxone, which is essentially a life sentence. In one treatment of ibogaine, someone with multi-decade dependency on opioids, including fentanyl, will be free of all symptoms. They'll be able to function normally and begin to rebuild their relationships, their sense of work and purpose, utilize their talents, become part of a community that serves that new vision for their life. Now, it also what we've seen is we treat combat veterans who suffer, as you were describing before, from PTSD or traumatic brain injury. More veterans have died from untreated PTSD or TBI than deaths in combat since 9/11. So what that means is they're going overseas, they're being deployed. They're experiencing these conditions of war. They're coming back and using the resources of the VA, including pharmaceuticals, and they're not finding relief to such an extent that they're taking their own lives to the tune of over 22 a day. This medication, ibogaine, has demonstrated through a Stanford Medical School study last year that over 86% reduction in symptoms for 30 Navy SEALs that were studied for over a year. Not only are the symptoms reduced, but the durability of that relief is maintained for over a year so far.
Okay, so then we get back to, so why not have it? I mean, I've already, I don't feel like you're doing an infomercial here for ibogaine. So Kentucky looked at it. They were going to spend $45 million to move forward on the study. Then some bunch of doctors said, no, it causes cardiac problems. So then I don't know where the vote is in Kentucky, but it looks like Texas has passed this thing. So I think as more and more states, and maybe with RFK Jr. in there, now looking at psilocybin and some other ways to be able to allow the person to heal, that there might be sort of a new day for some of this research to actually begin to bloom and flower. Are you feeling more optimistic?
Right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. So RFK actually tweeted out that he believed that Ibogaine should be rescheduled. Ibogaine is a Schedule 1 substance in the United States, which means it essentially cannot be researched. It can't be possessed, manufactured, administered, imported for any purpose.
But because Schedule 1, Tom, Schedule 1 is that they basically
the highest level of illegality.
Marijuana's in there. And what they said is it has no medicinal qualities. It cannot help you in any way. So therefore, don't bother researching it. And they throw them all in there to just stop it, right? They don't want anybody to don't fund it, do anything else, because if somebody found this, then they wouldn't need to take a lifetime supply of XYZ produced by some pharmaceutical company who's, by the way, friend used to work at the FDA, then works back at pharma. He leaves pharma, goes back to the FDA again. I mean, they're all in cahoots to make sure that the money stays where they want the money to stay.
That's correct.
That's me, not you saying that. Yes, one might think that is the case.
But that seems to be the case. But we also know, based on the discovery in the lawsuits against companies like Purdue Pharma and others that manufactured and distributed opioids. I mean, Washington State won over almost $150 million in a trial, in a settlement to treat people who were overprescribed and ended up addicted. And the state has a obligation to use those funds to find a solution to this problem. And we know that statistically, the existing solutions, either a conventional treatment facility, which statistically most people who enter, 2.5 million people enter into the United States this year into a conventional treatment facility. Over 50% of them will leave before the end of the treatment. And of the others that stay, 9 out of 10 will say it was an unsatisfying experience. But yet, because it's covered by insurance usually, they will go back and they will go back and they will go back. There has to be a better solution. I decided that there should be a global leader in a medically based psychedelic assisted treatment. I just had to do it in Mexico. It's not about going to Mexico. It's about doing it the right way. And the only place that we can do it currently to heal from trauma or other mental health conditions using Ibogaine is Mexico.
There are other states or other countries that have it, but I guess the closest is Mexico. So people come there for a diagnosed problem, and then it is administered with the care and the oversight of the doctors that are working the people through. To me, I always think anywhere you can go to get some sort of real, true healing. I read a couple of interviews that you've done, Tom, and you talk about healing, not just a physical healing, but there's a mental healing that needs to go with it as well. I think it is just a tragedy that every single day another 10,000 or 20,000 people are prescribed some type of serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and now it is also being prescribed as kids as young as 5. I mean, why we're giving kids as young as 5 years old?
They prescribe it to pets. Are you kidding me? They prescribe it to pets, and two out of 3. Adults or humans that are prescribed an SSRI will say that it was an unsatisfying solution. 1/3 will say it didn't do anything at all. Another third will say that it might have helped, but the side effects, weight gain, sexual dysfunction, etc., eclipse the benefits. And there are a lot of very large companies that will tell you that's the best that the world can do. And I just think that's not true. So what you mentioned, Kentucky. So Ibogaine does have side effects, which can be mitigated with advanced medical protocols. 65,000 people will go under general anesthetic today in the United States, where they are completely asleep and their body is open. That is a heck of a lot more risky than administering a psychedelic, even when the psychedelic can cause what's called a QT prolongation or a cardiac risk.
Yeah.
It can be mitigated with proper evaluation, proper informed, trained professional clinicians. And, that's the only way it should be administered, frankly.
Yeah. Well, listen, I give you credit for plowing the new field, and hopefully the work that you do helps those people that are suffering to want to get away from and get out of the cycle of taking one drug after another. Tom Feegle there at Beond.USA.
No, BEOND.US.
BEOND. How do you pronounce
.US.
How do you pronounce
.US. .US. That's
.US.
Beyond
okay,
.US.
Stop yelling at me, everybody. Make me take some. I'm gonna have to take some lithium over here or something. All right, hey Tom, keep going.
Just meditation, John.
I will.
Meditation. You'll be fine.
Thank you, doctor.
Breathing.
Appreciate that, Tom. Thank you.
You're doing great.
Thank you. Good. All right. Hey,
thank you. It's great to be with you.
Thanks
today.
for your time. Keep going. I appreciate the good work. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Let's go over it.